The auditorium was full. The warm lights above the stage cast a golden glow on the faces of the crowd. Cameras were lined up at the back, their lenses ready to capture every moment. People had gathered from different parts of the country to attend this Leadership and Innovation Summit. There was excitement in the air, but also a certain curiosity. Many knew that the two key speakers, Narendra Modi and Sundar Pichai, had different journeys, yet shared a mutual respect for each other. Nay, Rendra, Modi was sitting on the stage, his hands gently folded, listening as the host introduced him. Sundar Pichai sat beside him, looking calm and focused. They had met several times before, but this time felt different. There was no official agenda, no scripted exchange. It was an open conversation about life, struggles, and the lessons that shaped them. As the host handed over the microphone to Narendra, Modi smiled, his eyes scanning the audience. He began speaking in his soft yet firm voice. He didn't talk about politics or leadership at first. Instead, he started with a story, one that came from deep within his heart. "I remember a day from my childhood," he said slowly, as if replaying the memory in his mind. "I was very young, maybe 12 or 13. My family lived in a small house, and we struggled to make ends meet. My father ran a tea stall at the railway station. I would help him every morning before going to school. One day, a sudden storm hit our town. The winds were strong, and the rain poured heavily. I had to carry a tray of hot tea to some passengers, but the wind almost knocked me down. I remember my clothes were soaked, and my hands were shaking. Still, I kept walking. When I reached the passengers, one of them looked at me and said something I can never forget." The audience leaned forward. Sundar Pichai's eyes were fixed on Modi, sensing that the memory carried weight. The man told me, "You are too young to work in such hard weather. You should be home." I smiled and said, "My family needs me, sir." He nodded, and without another word, took the cup of tea. But as he left, I noticed he had left an extra coin on the tray. It was not much, but for me, at that time, it was like receiving a blessing. I kept that coin in my pocket for years. It reminded me that even in the hardest moments, small acts of kindness can keep us going. The hall was silent. The story was simple, but the way Modi spoke made it powerful. The details, the rain, the storm, the shivering hands, made it easy for everyone to imagine. Sundar Pichai finally spoke. "That's a beautiful memory," he said softly. "But what did that coin mean to you as you grew older?" Modi looked thoughtful. "It meant that people notice effort. It meant that when we work hard, even strangers can become part of our journey. It also meant that kindness does not need to be big to make a difference." Then something unexpected happened. Sundar leaned forward and placed his hands together in a respectful gesture. "Prime Minister," he said, "I have to share something with you. Your story just reminded me of something from my own childhood." The crowd shifted in their seats. They were expecting a standard response, but Sundar's tone suggested this was personal. "When I was a boy in Chennai," he continued, "my family didn't have much. There were days when we couldn't afford certain things. One day, I wanted a cricket bat badly, but I knew my parents couldn't buy it for me. A neighbor, who barely knew me, noticed me playing with a broken bat. He didn't say anything then. The next day, he came to my door with a brand new bat. He didn't want thanks. He just smiled and left. I never forgot that." The audience felt the connection instantly. Two men, worlds apart in background and profession, were united by memories of small acts of kindness. It was more than just nostalgia. It was a reminder of how such moments shape who we become. Then, without warning, Sundar turned toward Modi and said something that made the entire auditorium pause. "Your story has reminded me of something I've been meaning to do for a long time. I think today is the right time." The room grew still. Even Modi tilted his head slightly, curious. "When we talk about leadership, Sundar continued. We often focus on big achievements, big changes. But leadership also comes from moments like these when someone notices your struggle and chooses to help. Prime Minister, you carried tea in the rain. I carried a bat with gratitude. Maybe today, in this hall, we can create another such moment together. The audience sat in silence, their eyes moving between Sundar Pichai and Narendra Modi. There was something in Sundar's voice calm, but charged with purpose, that made everyone feel that a special moment was about to unfold. Narendra Modi leaned slightly forward, his curiosity clear. What do you mean, Sundar? He asked in a soft, almost playful tone. Sundar took a slow breath, as if choosing his words carefully. Prime Minister, your story reminded me that sometimes the smallest things can give someone hope. I want to share something I have carried with me for many years, something that might seem small, but has a meaning that goes beyond its size. He reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. The room grew quieter. Even the clicking of cameras stopped for a moment. Sundar untied the pouch and held up an old cricket ball. Its leather was faded, the stitching slightly loose. This, Sundar began, is the very first cricket ball I ever owned. It was given to me by my father when I was 9 years old. It wasn't new, but to me, it was the most valuable thing in the world. I have kept it all these years, as a reminder of where I came from, of the simple beginnings that taught me to work hard and stay humble. The crowd seemed puzzled at first. Why would he bring such an old object to such an important event? But then Sundar looked directly at Modi, and his next words explained everything. Prime Minister, you kept a coin as a reminder of kindness and resilience. I kept this cricket ball for the same reason. I want to give it to you today, because your story has made me realize that such reminders should not just stay with us. They should be passed on to inspire others. He extended his hand, holding the cricket ball toward Modi. The audience gasped. Quietly, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the world, was offering something deeply personal, something that had been with him for decades. Narendra. Modi looked at the ball for a long moment. His eyes softened. He reached out, taking it with both hands, and held it carefully, as if it were made of glass. This, Modi said slowly, is more than a gift. It is a part of your journey. I will keep it, but not for myself. I will use it to tell young people that memories and lessons are more valuable than gold. The audience broke into applause, but Sundar wasn't done. He waited for the applause to fade, then continued, his voice a little more serious. There's another reason I wanted to give you this today. When I was a boy, I used to believe that the people who truly inspire us are far away, unreachable. But the truth is, inspiration can come from anywhere, from a father working hard, from a neighbor who notices your struggle, from a leader who remembers his childhood. I think we forget that sometimes. Modi nodded. Yes, he replied, and when we forget, we lose a part of what makes us human. Then, unexpectedly, a young man in the audience stood up. He was in the back row, wearing a simple shirt. Sir, he called out, his voice trembling slightly. I know this is not planned, but can I share something? The host looked startled, unsure whether to allow it. But Modi gestured kindly. Go ahead, Beta, he said. The young man stepped forward, his steps shaky. I came here today with borrowed money for the ticket. I wanted to see you both speak, because I felt like my life had no direction. But hearing your stories, it feels like someone just lit a small lamp inside me. I don't have anything valuable like your coin or cricket ball, but I do have my father's old watch. It's broken, but it's the only thing I've kept since he passed away. I want to give it to you both, as my reminder that no matter how broken we are, we can still hold value. The hall was utterly silent. Sundar and Modi exchanged a glance. Without hesitation, they both stood, walked down from the stage, and met the young man in the middle of the hall. Modi took the watch gently. Sundar placed a hand on the young man's shoulder, and in that moment, the three of them stood together, connected by stories, loss, and kindness. That the cameras clicked again, but this time, no one was thinking about the headlines. They were thinking about the truth of the moment, that some gifts can't be measured in money, only in meaning. But as they walked back to the stage, Sundar whispered something to Modi that the microphones didn't catch. Whatever it was, it made Modi's eyes widen in surprise. Narendra Modi settled back into his seat, the young man's broken watch resting carefully on the table beside the cricket ball. Sundar Pichai sat beside him, his expression calm but with a hint of something else, anticipation. The audience could sense it too. Whatever Sundar had whispered had clearly stirred something in Modi, and people were now leaning forward in their seats, waiting to know more. Modi turned slightly toward Sundar. "You should tell them," he said with a small smile. "They will understand." Sundar hesitated for a moment, then leaned toward the microphone. "When I saw that young man come forward just now," he began, "I was reminded of a promise I once made to myself, a promise I have never spoken about in public." His voice grew softer, but in the silence of the hall, every word was clear. "Many years ago, when I first moved to the United States for my studies, I was living in a small room and working part-time to cover expenses. One day, my mother called me from India. She told me about a neighbor's son who had dropped out of school because his family could not afford the fees. I remember sitting in my room that night, thinking about how a few hundred rupees could change that boy's life. I had very little at that time, but I still sent the money, and in that moment, I promised myself if I ever had the means, I would make sure that no deserving student would have to stop studying because of money." There was a pause, as if the weight of his words needed space to settle. Then Sundar's eyes moved from the audience to Modi. "Prime Minister, when that young man stood up just now, it felt like a sign. I think the time to act on that promise, in a bigger way, has come." The audience shifted. A few people exchanged glances. Some even whispered to each other, "Narendra." Modi's voice was calm but firm. "And what do you plan to do, Sundar?" Sundar looked back at the young man, who was still standing in the aisle, unsure of what was happening. "I want to start a scholarship program for students from small towns and villages, students who have dreams but no resources. And I want this young man here to be the first recipient." A collective gasp filled the room. The young man's eyes widened. "Sir?" He stammered, his voice breaking. But Sundar raised a hand gently. "No need to thank me now. Your job is to use it well, to study, to grow, and to someday help someone else, just like I am helping you." The applause was immediate and thunderous. People were clapping not just for the scholarship, but for the way the moment had unplanned, yet deeply meaningful. Modi leaned into his microphone, his tone filled with warmth. "This is the kind of leadership the world needs. Not leadership that talks only of numbers and policies, but leadership that looks into the eyes of people and says, 'I see you, and I believe in you.'" The young man's tears were visible, even from the stage. But as the applause faded, Sundar turned again toward Modi and spoke with a more serious tone. "Prime Minister, I have one request. This scholarship should not just be from me. I want it to be a joint initiative. You and I, together, as a symbol that leadership and kindness are not limited to one field or one profession." The audience erupted again, but this time with a different kind of energy, an energy of unity, of a shared dream. Modi nodded slowly, then extended his hand. Sundar shook it, sealing the promise in front of thousands of witnesses, just when it felt like the moment had reached its peak. Modi added something that no one expected. "If we are doing this together, Sundar, then, we will do more than just give money. We will visit these students ourselves. We will go to their homes, their villages. We will look into their eyes and tell them that they matter." There was a deep stillness in the room after those words. It wasn't the stillness of boredom, it was the stillness that comes when people feel something deep in their chest. But, before the session could end, the host stepped forward, holding a note that had just been handed to her by a volunteer. She looked confused for a moment, then turned to the two men. "Prime Minister, Mr. Pichai there is a person outside the venue who says he must speak to both of you immediately. He claims he has something important to add to your conversation." Both Sundar and Modi exchanged curious glances. They had no idea that the man waiting outside was about to reveal a truth that would change the meaning of this day entirely. The room was buzzing with curiosity. The host's announcement had caught everyone off guard. Who could this mystery person be, and what could he possibly have to add to such an emotional and historic moment? Narendra Modi glanced at Sundar Pichai, a faint smile forming on his face. "Shall we see what this is about?" Sundar nodded, his expression calm but alert. "Yes. Sometimes, the unexpected brings the most powerful lessons." The host signaled to the security team, and a few moments later, the heavy side doors of the auditorium opened. A man stepped in, his posture straight, his face lined with age and experience. He wore a simple kurta and carried a small leather satchel. His eyes scanned the hall until they found Modi and Sundar. He walked slowly toward the stage, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the silence. Every eye in the hall followed him. When he reached the front, he paused, looked at both leaders, and spoke in a steady voice. "Prime Minister Modi, Mr. Pichai, I have come here because what you spoke today, it is connected to something from my past." Sundar leaned forward slightly. "And what is that?" The man placed the satchel on the table in front of them. "Many years ago, in a small railway station, a young boy was carrying tea through heavy rain. He was soaked to the skin, but he kept walking until he reached a group of passengers. I was one of them." Modi's eyes narrowed as if he were trying to pull the memory from the depths of his mind. "I was on my way to take up my first job in a distant city," the man continued. "When that boy handed me the tea, I told him he was too young to be working in such weather. He smiled and said, 'My family needs me.' Sir, I left a small coin on his tray, not because I pitied him, but because I respected him." The audience gasped softly. Sundar turned to Modi, realization dawning. "Prime Minister, he's talking about you." Modi's lips parted slightly, his eyes fixed on the man. You were the one." The man nodded. "Yes, I had no idea that boy would one day become the Prime Minister of India. But I kept thinking about him over the years. I wondered what became of him. Today, as I watched the news of this event, I saw you on the screen telling that very story, and I knew I had to come here." From the satchel, he pulled out a small, weathered envelope. "I kept that same coin all these years. It became my reminder that even the smallest moments can change how we see the world. And now, I want to return it to you." The hall went completely still. Modi took the envelope with both hands and slowly opened it. Inside was the coin, aged, dull, but still intact. Modi looked at it for a long moment, then closed his fingers around it. "I never thought I would see this again," he said quietly. "This coin was my treasure for years. I lost it when our family moved houses, and now, after all this time, it has found its way back to me." Sundar smiled, his voice warm. "Sometimes, life has a way of returning the lessons we thought were behind us." But the man wasn't finished. He turned to Sundar. "Mr. Pichai, I also want you to know something. The day I gave that coin, I was only able to do so because a stranger had once helped me in my own youth. He bought me my first train ticket when I couldn't afford it. Without that act, I would never have been in that railway station to meet the young Modi." The audience murmured. There was a visible thread of connection, small acts of kindness, linking lives across decades. Modi placed the coin on the table beside the cricket ball and the broken watch. "Look at this," he said to the audience. 3 objects, 3 stories, all connected by kindness. Each one passed from hand to hand, across time and distance. None of us planned it, yet here we are, joined by them. But then, the man's tone shifted. Prime Minister, Mr. Pichai, there is something more you need to know. The neighbor who once bought me that train ticket, he disappeared from my life soon after. For years, I never knew his name, but last month, I saw a photo in the newspaper. It was you, Mr. Pichai. The crowd gasped, their shock almost audible. Sundar froze for a moment, searching his memory. He began slowly. I did once buy a ticket for a young man at the Chennai station. He was stranded and didn't have the fare, but I never knew where he went or what happened to him. The man smiled gently. And now you know. You bought me the chance to start my career, and because of that, I ended up on a train where I met the boy who would become Prime Minister. Without you, this entire chain of events would not have existed. The hall erupted not with loud applause, but with the kind of deep, emotional reaction that made people wipe their eyes. The story had come full circle in a way no one could have predicted. Sundar turned to Modi, his voice low but firm. This isn't just coincidence. This is a sign. What we are about to do with the scholarship program, it was meant to happen. Modi nodded. Yes, but now, we must take it even further. Because if a single act can create this chain, imagine what many acts can do. And as the audience hung on their words, Sundar leaned closer to Modi and whispered something that made him look both astonished and deeply moved. Narendra Modi's expression shifted from surprise to quiet reflection as Sundar Pichai whispered in his ear. The audience could sense that whatever was just said carried great weight. Modi straightened in his chair, took a deep breath, and looked at Sundar with an approving nod. Ladies and gentlemen, Modi began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. What Sundar has just suggested is something I believe could change lives not in small numbers, but in thousands, maybe millions. The audience leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the stage. Sundar took the microphone. Earlier, we spoke about starting a scholarship program, but what if we went beyond that? What if we built something that could reach every corner of this country, something that did not just give money, but also guidance, mentorship, and skills? Because financial help can open a door, but guidance helps you walk through it. Modi smiled. And what if that door is always kept open for the next person who comes along? The man who had returned the coin was still standing nearby, watching intently. The young man with the broken watch sat in the front row, clutching the strap in his hands. They were living proof of how a single act could ripple across decades. Prime Minister Sundar continued, what I'm proposing is this: we create a nationwide network of mentors, professionals, and leaders who volunteer their time to help young people find their path. Alongside scholarships, we give them real skills, internships, and opportunities to learn directly from those who have walked the road before them. There was a murmur of excitement in the crowd. Modi's eyes sparkled with energy. And I will make sure that this network reaches the smallest villages, the most remote towns. No matter where a young dreamer lives, they should know that someone, somewhere, believes in them. The applause that followed was powerful, long, and heartfelt. But just as it began to fade, Sundar added, there's more. I want the first chapter of this program to begin with 3 symbols: the cricket ball, the broken watch, and the coin. They will travel together, to schools and villages, carried by us, so that every student we meet can hold them in their hands and hear their stories. The audience reacted instantly. They understood the power of tangible symbols, how they could carry meaning far more than speeches or numbers ever could. The man with the coin stepped forward. If my coin can inspire even one child to keep going, then it has done its job. Twice over. The young man with the watch spoke next. And if my father's watch can remind someone that broken things can still have value, then it's worth more than gold. As they spoke, Cameras flashed, capturing the image of all four standing together: Modi, Sundar, the man from the station, and the young student then. Just as the host was about to close the session, a woman's voice called out from the back of the hall, "Prime Minister, Mr. Pichai, I had something." The crowd turned. A middle-aged woman stepped forward, holding a small folded letter. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "I have listened to everything today, and I believe you should know this. I am the daughter of the man who once gave Sundar Pichai his first cricket ball." The room froze. Sundar's head turned sharply toward her. "Your father?" She nodded. "Yes. He told me that day he saw a young boy staring at a cricket shop window, looking like he wanted to be part of the game, but didn't have the means. He bought you that ball, Sundar, not because he knew who you would become, but because he believed every child deserves to feel like their dreams are possible." There was a deep, collective intake of breath. Another link in the chain had been revealed, another reminder that kindness often comes from people who expect nothing in return. Sundar's voice softened. "I never knew his name. I wish I could thank him." "You can," she said, "because his belief in helping others is still alive in me. And I would like to be part of this mission you are creating." The room erupted into applause again, but this time, it wasn't just for the leaders on stage, it was for the idea that kindness could span generations, weaving together lives in ways no one could predict. Narendra Modi raised his hand to quiet the room. "Friends, what you are witnessing today is proof that no act of goodness is ever wasted. It may travel far, it may take years, but it will always find its way back." But before the applause could build again, the woman stepped closer to the stage. "Prime Minister, Mr. Pichai, there is one more thing you need to know about my father, and it might change how you see everything you've spoken about today." The entire hall went still. The woman's voice had carried a quiet weight, and now every eye was fixed on her. Even the smallest sound, a chair creaking, a pen dropping, seemed to echo in the silence. Sundar Pichai and Narendra Modi both leaned forward slightly, their expressions showing a mix of curiosity and concern. The woman held the folded letter tightly in her hands. "This," she said softly, "is a letter my father wrote many years ago. He never gave it to anyone. He left it in an old box, and I only found it after he passed away. The letter is addressed to you, Prime Minister Modi." A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. Modi's eyebrows lifted, and Sundar glanced at him in astonishment. "To me?" Modi asked quietly. She nodded. "Yes. My father wrote this before he knew you had become Prime Minister, before he even knew your name. He wrote it for a boy he once saw working in the rain at a railway station. He told me he never forgot the determination in that boy's eyes. He said, if this child ever crosses my path again, I will remind him that greatness does not come from comfort, but from persistence in the face of hardship." The hall was completely silent now. She stepped forward, climbed the steps to the stage, and handed the letter to Modi. He unfolded it slowly. The paper was worn, the ink slightly faded, but the handwriting was clear. As he read it, his eyes grew moist. When he finished, he placed the letter gently on the table beside the cricket ball, the broken watch, and the coin. Modi's voice was low, but steady. "Friends, this letter says something simple, yet powerful. It says, never forget where you started, because that is where your strength lives." He paused, looking at the audience. This man wrote these words for me, not knowing if I would ever hear them. And yet, here they are, reaching me after all these years. Life has a way of completing its circles. Sundar spoke next, his voice full of warmth. "And perhaps this is the greatest lesson of today. It's not about the cricket ball, the coin, the watch, or even this letter. It's about the threads of kindness and respect that weave through all our lives. Sometimes we see them immediately, and sometimes it takes decades, but they are always there, binding us together." The woman smiled faintly. My father believed that when you give without expecting anything in return, you plant a seed that will grow long after you are gone. Modi looked at Sundar. This mission we are starting it will be the soil for such seeds, and we will make sure they grow in every village, every town, every city. Sundar nodded. And the first seeds are already here. This young man with the broken watch, this man with the coin, this letter, and everyone in this hall who will carry today's story forward. The applause began softly, then grew louder, filling the hall like a wave. But it wasn't just applause, it was a promise. As the cameras flashed, the 4 objects were placed together in a small glass case. Modi announced, "These will travel with us wherever we go, to remind people that their own stories matter. We will call them the 4 lights, because each one holds a piece of the truth we've learned today." And then, almost as if it had been planned, the young man with the watch, the man with the coin, and the woman with the letter all stepped forward and joined Modi and Sundar at the front of the stage. 5 people, linked not by blood, not by profession, but by a chain of kindness that had stretched across decades. Modi spoke one last time before they left the stage. "Remember, greatness is not what you achieve for yourself, it is what you inspire in others. And sometimes, all it takes is a small act, given with a big heart." The crowd stood, clapping not just for the people on stage, but for the idea that in a world full of noise, kindness still had the power to be heard. And as they walked off the stage together, Sundar turned to Modi and said with a quiet smile, "Today, Prime Minister, we didn't just share a memory, we made one that will outlive us." The next month came quickly. True to their word, Narendra Modi and Sundar Pichai began their journey, not in the bustling cities, but in the small villages that were often overlooked. Their first stop was a remote settlement surrounded by fields and narrow dusty roads. There was no grand auditorium here, just an open courtyard where wooden benches had been set up under the shade of a giant banyan tree. Word had spread fast. By the time Modi and Sundar arrived, the courtyard was full. Children sat in neat rows at the front, their eyes wide with curiosity. Behind them stood parents, farmers, shopkeepers, and elders, many of whom had never seen either man in person. As the crowd settled, Sundar opened the small glass case and carefully lifted out the cricket ball, the coin, the broken watch, and the letter. He held them up one by one, telling the full story: the stormy day at the railway station, the boy who carried tea, the neighbor's kindness, the man who kept a coin for decades, the broken watch from a father's memory, the letter written to a stranger, and the moment when all of it came together. The villagers listened in complete silence. Even the children seemed to understand that this was not an ordinary speech, it was something they could feel. Modi then stepped forward. "These are not just objects," he said, "they are lights. And today, we are adding another light here, in your village. It will take the form of scholarships, yes, but also training, mentorship, and the promise that you will never be alone in your dreams." Then something beautiful happened. An elderly woman in the crowd stood up, leaning on a wooden stick. Her voice was weak, but steady. "I have nothing to give you but my blessings," she said. "But I have kept a clay oil lamp in my home for 40 years. It was the first thing my husband and I bought together. It has seen many storms, but it still burns. I wanted to join your lights." She handed the small, worn lamp to Sundar. He accepted it with both hands, bowing slightly in respect. "This," Sundar said, "will be the 5th light, a symbol that no matter how dark the world feels, a small flame can guide you." The crowd erupted into applause, many wiping tears from their eyes. From that day forward, the journey grew. Each village they visited added something to the case: an old book, a handmade toy, a photo of a teacher, a seed from a family farm. Every item carried a story, and every story carried hope. Months later, the collection had grown so much that it could no longer be carried in a single case. They began to display the items in small exhibitions in schools and community centers, where children could touch them, hear their histories, and be reminded that greatness often begins with something small. One evening, after visiting their 20th village, Modi and Sundar sat quietly together, watching the sunset. The glass case rested nearby, now filled with more than just objects. It held the heartbeat of hundreds of people. Sundar, Modi said softly, "Do you realize what we've done? We haven't just given opportunities, we've taught people to look for the light in others." Sundar smiled, "And they will pass it on long after we're gone." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of gold and red. It felt like the closing of a chapter, but they both knew this story had no real ending. The chain of kindness they had strengthened would continue to grow, invisible yet unbreakable, linking strangers, friends, and generations yet to come.